viewed art as a means to make the invisible visible, to make the inexpressible expressible. And for him, it wasn't about representing life. There's a famous Klee quote that I actually have written above my easel, which is, art does not reproduce the visible, but rather it makes visible. So it's sort of this, art has like the capacity to bring forth not just the appearances of things, but something more profound, something more true in a mysterious sense that I'm sure we can discuss as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and that was one of the quotes that Heidegger himself quoted in his Klee notes. So I think that's kind of this connection between Klee and Heidegger that I'm noticing, is this shared belief that art is a making visible, a sort of a bringing to bear, if you will.
Yeah.
In a way that, yeah. But I mean, yeah, I don't want to just go on and on about it, because we can read more specific Heidegger notes about it later. But I didn't have time to read all of Heidegger's Origin of the Works of Art, or the Origin of the
I
Work
did
of Art.
not read the whole thing.
Yeah.
I just kind of went back and referenced some notes from undergrad, and
but I know there's like a difference. Like his thoughts on art did change, and perhaps were changed in part from this, from whatever he saw in Klee's work. It did kind of transform his thoughts on art a little bit. But I know that you've written about that essay before, and I was wondering if, like, does this sound quite similar to you, or is there like any stark differences between sort of what Klee is going for with, making visible versus representing the visible?
Right. To
that
me,
was a really weird formulated question. I'm sorry. This is my first social interaction of the day. I'm sorry.
Hey, same. Besides my dog, which doesn't count. So
hey, it counts. Well, yeah, I talked to Spinach actually earlier. So
yeah.
I'm a social butterfly, basically.
Basically, I'm so popular.
You're so popular. My cat loves me.
My cat loves me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a natural, from Origin of the Work of Art to these notes, it feels like a natural progression in Heidegger's philosophy, and kind of the same progression that is hinted at in Being in Time to me. And we've talked about in the past on this podcast, so we'll link those episodes below if people are interested in this specifically, but how Being in Time is an incomplete work, and that Heidegger essentially gets to a place where he no longer believes that what he's trying to do with Being in Time, that project kind of becomes insufficient in what it is that he is trying to discuss and bring to bear through it. And I think that in The Origin of the Work of Art, he talks about a Van Gogh piece. I want to say it's called Peasant Shoes.
Yeah,
and
I believe so. Or at least it is of peasant shoes.
Right. It is of peasant shoes. But he talks about how the utility of the shoes as a tool is very much what is kind of being expressed there, and that because the shoes appear like it builds in it his discussion of art bakes in this assumption of representation, right? And that there is something about the utility or the usefulness that is a little bit more inexpressible that art does pick up. So there's already these hints of like expressing something more than just the visible, expressing something more than just the tangible in his thoughts on art. But it still feels very like trying to understand it through language in The Origin of the Work of Art, whereas his notes on Klee feel very much like, oh, this is its own thing that like almost like the way that he kind of decided the language of Being in Time is like, okay, this isn't working. It feels like he finds Klee and is like, oh, it's not that I'm trying to use language to describe the thing that language can't describe in art. Like, of course, that's kind of a failed project.
Mm-hmm.
There is something here that is a new communicative, connective mode, different than, I almost said more than, but I don't know if that's maybe a debate, different than how Heidegger had previously gone about his project, which I think he thinks about more artistically than a lot of philosophers do. So I almost don't want to just say writing. But yeah, and that like seeing Klee's work in this more imaginative, dreamlike way kind of opened up the door for, it felt like a very, like his notes feel like he had a very profound epiphany around not just
lots
art,
of exclamation marks.
Right, but around like, oh, this is like a whole thing that I had been trying to describe in this one way, but you can't even describe because Klee's capturing something ineffable, which was really cool to me to see. So there's certainly similarities, but it feels like a very natural evolution from Heidegger's frustration with not being able to express something and then seeing something that he's trying, like almost when you get inspired by another artist or another writer and it's like, oh my gosh, they're capturing something that I wish I could capture. Like they're doing something that like when I hear a really good, to me, inspiration is when someone doing something makes me want to learn that skill. So like my favorite songs are the ones that make me wish I was like an amazing singer or I could play the guitar, right? Or my favorite athletes are the ones who make me like, oh, I should go learn how to play basketball because like the way you do it is so artful, you know?
Right.
And that's kind of the vibe that I get here, too, is that Heidegger's like, oh, I wish that I had that skill set so that I could kind of do this thing, but I want to do that thing in a different way, in his Heideggerian way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And I like that you brought it back to being in time because this, I mean, he's doing it in the origin of the work of art as well, and using, you know, these different terms like work, earth, the clearing, there's another one that's sort of referencing like I forget what it was, but in being in time, in the origin of the work of art, and even later in his career, like in his lectures on Hölderlin's hymns, the Germania and the Rhine, it's like throughout his career we see this ever-changing attempt to basically a recognition that in order to talk about certain things, we have to completely rework the framework. Like the old frameworks, at least Heidegger will argue, kind of foreclose the possibility of even being able to bring, for example, the being or existence or the essence of art into view in like a more illuminating way. Yeah. And perhaps it actually reminded me of a second dream that I had about Heidegger and Klee, which I can't believe I forgot to mention this. But this one was far after the fact and kind of random. But I had a dream that I was going to like an art, or was it like, it was an art gallery, but in the context of the dream, it was supposed to be like a lecture. And Heidegger was there, and he was looking at like a painting from Klee that's in art museum in Zurich. It's supposed to be like a flower garden. I'll try to figure out what it's called. But in the dream, he was just looking at this painting, and somebody was trying to ask him like what he saw in it, and he couldn't say anything. Like he was just like, he like astounded and just like couldn't put it into words. And I think maybe he recognized that a little bit and didn't really try to, like, it's interesting because we try to do this. Klee also tried to do it. Like he recognized he was proficient like in visual art and in writing, but he still recognized this sort of impossibility of bridging the two.
Right.
And yeah, I forgot the end of that sentence structure, but those are kind of the things that reminded me of.
Yeah, well, and I think what you said about the frameworks is really poignant in that it does feel like Being in Time is Heidegger, like, almost discovering, like, he had kind of moved to a point already of like, okay, I'm trying to break down the old frameworks to do something new, because those paradigms don't really work because they're already framed, right? Like, how do you move beyond the frame of a framework that we're operating within? You can't.
Yeah.
So how do you keep moving? And it feels like he was in Being in Time, at least this is how I think I'm discovering this as I'm saying it, so I don't know if I fully agree with what I'm about to say.
I love
but
that. Okay, yeah.
I'll say it and we'll see what we think. Maybe it's that Being in Time is almost like moving outside of the old frameworks, but in a way that, like, counterculture is always defined by the culture. So moving outside of that framework is approaching a different framework that is still being defined by what it isn't, right?
Yes.
It is still being defined by the old framework. But then in seeing Klee, the epiphany is kind of like, oh, this is how you shed the framework, right? This is how you create something new that isn't in relationship to that at all. And it's like this third iteration, this tertiary kind of thing that isn't restrained at all by the aspects of art and language that Heidegger feels deeply restrained by.
Yeah. No, sorry, I just picked up the book when you said that because our guy, Dennis, he makes a similar point as well. And I'm sure I've mentioned this on here before because I do think it's a really interesting idea that abstract art by, creating art in a way rejecting the object, not representing any object. It's not itself a completely new framework. It's just like it's still operating within the framework of representing objects, like that view of art. But it's just like the negation of the object is not a framework outside of the object. Like it's still bound to that sort of picture of art, which honestly, I feel like that idea might work a little bit better how you described it, like in terms of ontology versus art, because, I mean, something that I guess another sort of idea that really resonates with me from Klee is this idea that, like he saw art as sort of, like a multidimensional simultaneity, like in a way that the linear progression of language just doesn't capture and can't capture. Like language, the way that you read it and write it has its own sort of chronological structure. But with a painted image, there's lots of different ways that like motion and like simultaneity at the same time is already sort of like baked into the painting. Like you have multiple layers on the painting, and Klee had certain ways of like indicating motion in his painting, like arrows or certain like structures that he would use to indicate motion. So for him, like this idea of movement and like a single image for him was something that was dynamic and always in motion, which I find very interesting. And
well, because in some ways, like if we think about writing, like you said, it's linear. You're reading one word at a time, even though we read fast enough to be able to comprehend sentences and paragraphs in relationship to each other. You're still only grasping one piece of that at a time. Whereas with a painting, sure, you can focus on like one corner or one little pocket of a painting, especially if it's a really large painting. But also you are kind of supposed to, how are you supposed to engage with art? But you do kind of see the whole thing at once in a way that like your sensory apparati are intaking it in a simultaneous way, very different to language. Which, yeah, so I can see that. But even then, it's interesting to say that, but art is in motion when it is a still stagnant picture. But
yeah,
hearing
like,
it in that way,
it's
it's
kind
like
of counterintuitive, but like